You're listening to the Breakaway Wealth Podcast, the show that helps you build wealth faster, think outside the box, and break out of the herd. Here's your host, Jim Oliver.
Welcome back, Breakaway Wealth. I'm your host, Jim Oliver, and today it's just me. And we're going to talk about the one shift that separates the herd from the wealthy. Are you ready for this? So, remember where I'm coming from is I grew up in poverty, grew up in scarcity, was homeless for a while. And at age 13, I started to work in this casket factory. And I realized that the owner of the business does something different than the workers at the business. So most people spend their entire life chasing money, but never actually own their time. That's the trap. That's slavery with better branding. Today, I'm going to show you the one shift that separates the herd from the wealthy. And if you do, and if you don't get this, you'll work until you die, right? I mean, you'll either, once you quote retire, you're going to work at making sure you don't run out of money. You're going to have stress. You're going to have anxiety, because I see it every day here in Florida with my friends and neighbors that are, quote, retired on a lump sum. It's fear-based, okay? So, and here's the thing, is I'm not telling you theory. I lived this, okay? I grew up in scarcity, homelessness. By age 13, I'm working in a casket factory just to help our family survive, right? But in that factory, I noticed something. While everyone else traded their time for dollars, the business owner, Dwayne McIntyre, was playing a different game. Same town, but he lived in a different part of the town, right? The factory was in El Segundo for a while and then moved to Compton, but he lived in Palos Verdes. And if you're from Palos Verdes, I'm sure it's not perfect, but in my little head back at 13 years old, it was. Because if you don't know Palos Verdes, imagine like this hill, this beautiful hill in Los Angeles that overlooks the ocean. Now, does every house overlook the ocean? No, but the ones that I wanted did. Excuse me. So, same town, but he owned the game, and that stuck with me. It was, years later, I built a financial planning practice managing hundreds of millions of dollars. And you know what I found out? The entire Wall Street system was built on lies. People who actually got wealthy weren't following the guru advice. They were owners. They were buying assets. They were becoming the bank. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So here's a myth. This is a lie that you've been sold. It tells you save money in your 401k, right? We've done this before, but I'm going to ask you three questions. Not about 4Ks, just about life, right? Are taxes going up or down? Well, math, that little four-letter word, will tell you that they're going up because of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and interest on the debt. That taxes have to go up, okay? The revenue for the government has to go up. Where do they get that? They tax us because we're slaves, right? So that's number one. That's the first question. Second question, are the dollars that are in your pocket today, are they worth more today or in the future? Now, let me give you a reference. I'm 60 years old, and when I was a kid, I could buy at least 5 candy bars for $1, right? Today, you can't even buy 1 candy bar for $1. So the dollars in your pocket, they're always worth more today than in the future. Okay, last question. Would you rather pay tax on the seed or on the harvest? The little amount or the big amount? Well, of course, the little amount. 401ks, IRAs, all those government plans violate, except for a Roth IRA, it doesn't violate the last one, okay? But they violate the answers you just gave. They violate those. They answer the questions against what you just said. They tell you to save in your 401k, live below your means, right? I'm not saying don't live below your means and live above your means, but why give you this limiting vision of your life? And it sounds safe, right? Wrong. Because the reality is that the 401k balance for people between 55 and 64 is $232,000. Okay, now I know average, right? But I mean, Wall Street uses average, so let's use their vernacular. Let's use their stuff. Is if you took 4% of $232,000, okay, and that's like a 4% rule. It's 3 to 4%, but let's just go with the higher number, 4. Okay, that's about $928 a month in income. That's not retirement. That's poverty with a brochure. Okay, so let's say you had Social Security on that top of that. What's that? I don't know, $3,000 a month, maybe. Okay, so now you got $3,900 a month coming in. It's not a lot of money. And then you think, I'm going to take that $232,000 and I'm going to put it in the market. But what is the real rate of return? So again, we don't want to go to what is it right now today? But let's go back. History should teach us something. Between 2000 and 2010, the S&P 500 returned a negative 0.9% per year after inflation, all the other expenses for a whole decade of growth lost. Okay, now, what about banks? They pay you less than 1% while earning 10 to 15% rate of return on equity using your money. JP Morgan alone made $49.6 billion in 2023. Customers got crumbs. If the banks made their money the way that they're telling you to, and Wall Street's telling you to, they'd be broke. $49 billion. So what does a bank do to make that kind of money? Right? If you go to our community.createtailwind.com, you will see how banks work, right? Take some of our courses. All right, so here's the kicker. We talk about Wall Street. They encourage you to invest in Wall Street. Financial gurus like Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman tell you to invest in Wall Street. But here's the kicker. 70% of Americans plus, 70% plus, didn't get rich from stocks at all. They got from 70% are just these two things: business ownership and real estate. That's the truth the financial industry doesn't want you to know. They don't want you to know. They don't want you to hear that. So what's the question? Well, do you want to keep playing their game, or are you ready to break away? That's what this podcast is all about, breaking away, right? And if you think about it, it's the lies that they tell you. Remember, everything that you've ever been told about money, most of it, 99.9% of it's a lie. Now, why? Because they have to enslave you, because they want your money. They want all of it, and they want to give very little back to you. So what is the financial freedom formula, or just a freedom formula for financial independence? Let me give you the formula, and I'll just call it a freedom formula. Other people's money, other people's time equals financial freedom. Think about Dwayne McIntyre. He came in, other people, I don't know how many people worked at that company, 50? They were all working. So now he's leveraged 50 people's time. And who gets to keep all the profit? He does. He's just paying them for their time, the least amount that they will accept. Now, doesn't that sound like a bank, right? You put your money in the bank. They give you the least amount that you'll accept and not move it. And then what do they do with it? They go out and make all this money. Who gets the profit? They don't say, hey, we really did well as a bank, and your deposits helped us do that, or actually made it possible, so we're going to give you a little bit back. No. Now, some employers do that. If you're a key person, right, they might give you a little bit back, but you're making their dreams come true. So other people's money plus other people's time. The herd only uses their own money and their own time, and that's why they're stuck. Wealthy people, they use leverage. They use other people's time. They use their own. Wealthy people, they use leverage. They use other people's time. They own it. They own their time. That's the formula. Other people's money plus other people's time equals freedom. Okay, so now you have freedom, or you know the formula for freedom. So how do I accelerate this? How do I do things like we've seen, if you've listened to the Glenn Yaney's episode, is how do you take He was doing the Wall Street recommended thing, the government's recommended thing, putting money in a 401k. He was doing better than 55 to 64-year-olds, and he's in his 30s, early 30s. Then maybe he was in his 20s when he converted this. I think it was 30s though. But anyway, he takes this $300,000 and he turns it into a real estate machine. Over 500 mobile home pads and over 150 doors in multifamily, right? And growing, financially independent in his 30s. All right. So how did he do that? How did he go from Wall Street leading him down the chute to the slaughter, and he's following Wall Street, and they're a Judas goat, remember? Okay, let's back that up for a second. What is a Judas goat? Now, I grew up in LA, so I'm going to teach you something about farming. That sounds funny, right? Is in farming, if you want a sheep or cattle to get into the chute to the slaughterhouse, they got to be led. So who leads them? The Judas goat. Why is it Judas? Well, if you don't know the story of Judas, read that in your Bible. And, Judas is a traitor, because that goat's going to lead them in that chute. They're all nice and neat so they can slaughter them. But there's an escape. There's an escape gate for the goat. Wall Street has an escape gate. They're leading you down this path, right? But the only thing that's at the other end of the chute is destruction. So how do you break out of that? Well, don't go down. Don't follow Wall Street. Don't believe those lies. So now we've gotten rid of that. We're not going in the chute. We're running the other way. The heck with the goat, right? But there are three sides of this coin when we start looking at it. Okay, there's side one, that's heads. That's trading time for money. That's the job. That's the self-employment. That's a treadmill where we're like self-employed, but we're working 12, 15 hours a week. Then we flipped it over. Now we're on tails. Money works for you. Assets, cash flow, systems. And then the edge, now that's where the wealthy, they really live. The edge is when you control the bank. Infinite banking, that's the game changer. It was for Glenn. As soon as he had infinite banking and could start financing this acquisition of this real estate, it changed. All right, so I know a lot of people on this show, hopefully you've heard of infinite banking, but here it is in action, is step by step. Because I think this is important. And sometimes, I don't remember who said this quote, but it's people need to be reminded as much as they need to be educated. Okay, so just know that this is just a reminder. You capitalize, that's step one. You put cash into a dividend paying whole life policy, safe, liquid, compounding, uninterrupted every single day with a quality mutual insurance company. Okay. Now, the reason a mutual insurance company is you own the company. The policyholders own the company. Okay. So that we don't want a stock company because they don't pay dividends the same way. And you could have a stock company that has a mutual holding company. Fine. Okay. But we need to be an owner in that insurance company. Okay. So step two, we collateralize. We don't withdraw. We borrow against it. Whatever our cash value is, we never withdraw it. We collateralize it. Keep your money growing uninterrupted, guaranteed every single day. Step three, we acquire. We use the borrowed funds to buy cash flowing assets like a business, real estate, intellectual property. I mean, it's unlimited. It's infinite, all the things that we can use, right? Step four, recapture. Pay the policy loan back with the cash flow from the business. Step five, repeat. I was going to say rinse and repeat, but I don't know what rinse would be. So over and over and over, you do that. And then here's the thing. What do you have? You have a perpetual wealth engine. That's how I've bought more than 30 companies. And that's how you build true freedom. But here's the kicker. When you have an engine, and it's got horsepower, what do you want to do? You want those pistons to fire as fast as you can, meaning that 5-step process you want to happen as fast as possible. If the pistons in your engine, whether you have a V8, V6 twin turbo, V8, a twin turbo, or a V, right? I don't think there's anything bigger than that. There might be, but that's a big engine, right? And you got 12 pistons going. The faster those pistons turn, the more money you make. It's velocity, right? Okay, engineers and math people, scientists, I know it's not like velocity like that, but it's velocity of money when you have it in an infinite banking system. And the faster you turn it, the more money you make. Sounds good. All right, so let me give you the breakaway path. This is like, this is very simple. It's 5, again, the 5 things, right? Number 1, you got to audit. Where is your money parked right now? Is it working for you or is it working for someone else? Are you the customer of your life or are you the owner? And if you want to be the owner, then you got to first read Owner Shift, our brand new book. And it's like how to shift from that customer to that owner, right? Okay, so the second, number 2 is shift. Move from accumulation thinking to cash flow thinking. Stop worrying about having money like just sitting there, okay? Remember, motion is the law of God. If air doesn't go in and out of our bodies, we die. If blood doesn't flow through our veins, we die. If water doesn't flow, it becomes stagnant, which means it dies. If your money doesn't move, it dies. Okay, because of inflation, and they're debasing our money. Okay, so now step 3, leverage. Use infinite banking as your warehouse of wealth. That's where your warehouse is, okay? That's where you're gonna start your engine. Step 4, acquire. Buy one cash flowing asset and do it every 12 to 18 months, right? At least every 12 to 18 months. Repeat, scale, okay? Just repeat. So that's scaling until you have passive income covers your lifestyle burn rate. Okay, now you're free. That's when you've broken away from the herd. But what'll happen is you'll see this bigger picture. I just had a great conversation yesterday with Glenn about that. And he has this bigger vision of where his life is going. But you know what? He's in control of it. And control should not make you fearful. Control should make you free. So let me make this plain. Retirement isn't about age. It's about cash flow. And retirement isn't even the right word. Okay, retirement means to be taken out of service. But cash flow is about financial independence and financial freedom. I'm never going to retire. I mean, I hope that I am as healthy and feel as good as I do today, the last day of my life here on earth, before I graduate to heaven. But the herd, they retire. They don't serve till they die. They don't create value till they die. At 65, they're like, I'm done bowl anymore. I don't have anything else to give. I just want to play golf, have a couple of cocktails, take a nap, rinse and repeat. If you're 35 or something, that probably sounds pretty good. But when you see it in action, like I do every day, it's not great. It's not great. It's not a fulfilling life. It's not anything that I want. So let me ask you, which side of the coin are you living on? Are you owning or are you owned? Great question for you to answer. But remember, breakaway wealth is about deciding today that you're done being the cow. You're ready to be the rancher. You're ready to become the rancher. Okay, it doesn't just happen. And yes, the herd will laugh at you until the day they're begging you for a job. All right, so here's the next step. Go audit your money today and ask yourself, whose system is it working in? Is it somebody else's system or is it mine? And if you're ready to stop being lied to by banks and brokers and you're ready to go own the bank, buy assets, finally break away, go to createtailwind.com. Let's go to work. Let's get this done. Because here's the truth. You don't have to compete with the herd. You don't even have to play the same game. I'm begging you not to. You can own the game, not my game. But when you own your game, everyone else is they're just fighting for second place because your game's totally different. The way that Glenn is building his infinite banking is different than I built mine. It's different. He owns that. I owned mine, and you can own yours. And, we're here to help you. Why? Because I still remember looking up at the houses around this field that we slept in behind the Moose Lodge. And I remember the smell seems funny. I mean, 53 years ago, right? I mean, maybe like 50 years ago, I remember the smell of that field. And I remember the lights. I can tell you like a couple of the windows that I used to stare at. And there would be like, these big lights, and it just seemed like there were big houses. Now, I'm sure if I went back there today, I'd be like, those are the houses that were on that hill. But in my perception, as that was a big house. And the fact that they had a place to live, a home, at that moment in my life, it embedded that in me, that I want to help people have more. I want to help you get from Compton, Inglewood, Hawthorne, wherever, and this is the LA reference, to Palos Verdes, right? So let's give it a different reference. I lived right outside of Sioux City, Iowa for a long time. I want you to be at the Dunes or the Country Club or that neighborhood. And maybe you can relate to that in your town, like where people don't want to live and where people really want to live. But I don't want you to do it and be stressed that you have to live off of this accumulated money. I want you to do it and feel free and happy and not stressed. Okay. Normally at this point in the podcast, I ask somebody, what's the best advice you've ever been given? Okay. So I know I keep saying this because for some reason I just feel moved to say it again. The best advice that I ever got, the advice that I've used my whole life, okay, that I haven't strayed from. And by the way, I exclude the advice that's in the Bible because those are more like commands. Like Jesus says, do this, just love each other, right? Love your neighbor, love yourself. And that's probably the best advice that anybody could give you. But I'm talking about human advice that made a difference in my life. And that human advice was you've heard this maybe story before, but a janitor that was trying to sell me Amway took me to McDonald's. Yep, when I was running the Gold's Gym, I ate at McDonald's. It was breakfast. I think I had coffee and probably a biscuit or an egg McMuffin or something like that. That does sound good sometimes. But so as we're sitting there and he's talking to me about Amway, and I told him I didn't want to do Amway, then he said, Jim, and I said I hated to read or something like that. I think he gave me some stuff to read. And he said, you need to change that, because if you'll read for 1 hour a day on any subject, in 6 weeks, you can become an expert in that subject and you'll know more than 99% of the people in the world about that subject. I don't even know if it's true. Has it played out to be true in my life? Yes. If I start studying today about how I should train to gain muscle or to lose fat or to increase flexibility or all of those things, if I read for an hour a day, right? So 90 days or 6 weeks, so 45 days. What did I say? I said 6 weeks. So 45 days, right? So that's 45 days, 450 hours. I don't know. I'm sorry. Okay, so here, let's stop that for a second, Heather. So if you read for an hour a day, think of all the hours that you're going to compile on that subject of what to eat, how to train, how to gain muscle, lose fat, increase flexibility, whatever goals you have, right? Physically. 6 weeks, you'll know more than 99% of the people out there about how to do that. Pretty good. Are you willing to do that for 6 weeks? I hope you are. Okay. So then next thing is I always ask somebody, if God came down from heaven and only allowed you to retain the knowledge that you've received from one book, what would that book be? And I'm not going to give you that book because if you've listened, it's Jonathan Livingston Seagull for me, because in the book, he didn't want to be a seagull. I didn't want to be poor. I didn't want to live my whole life there. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have that scarcity. I wanted something more. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, he wanted to do tricks and acrobatics in the air and all this stuff. He wanted to be more than a seagull, okay? But I've said that book a bunch of times. So what book am I revisiting? Well, I had a great conversation last week with Kyle Reese. And Kyle, I said something about, that you're in the gap. And I said, you've read The Gap and the Gain, right? And he said, no. So I said, okay, by Friday, this is like on a Tuesday. by Friday, you need to read that book. So he ordered it. I think it didn't come by Friday, but he read it within a week. Okay. And his response was, oh my gosh, like this is legit. The Gap and the Gain. And what he says in The Gap and the Gain, you got to read the book. Okay. But he says, we trying to get to perfection, trying to like see that vision of perfection and get there is like chasing the horizon. So what is the horizon? It's where the sky meets the earth. Can you go there? No, because it keeps moving. So perfect, keeps moving. So if you keep on chasing perfect, you feel like you're not ever accomplishing anything. So what you have to do is you have to stop, turn around, and look how far you've come. That's the game. You've got to live in the game. So you plan to perfection and you measure back. You measure the game. If you're trying to lose 30 pounds, you don't like go, well, just haven't made 30 pounds. I'm a loser. I just haven't done it. You could be sitting on 18 pounds, 20 pounds. And if you do that, you'll think you're failing. But if you turn around and you go, I've lost 18 pounds. And then you even see this like in doctor's offices. They have like a thing that shows you what 18 pounds looks like on a fat. And you go, oh my gosh, that motivates you to get to 30. Okay. And by the way, when you get to 30, to Dan Sullivan's point, you'll want more. You'll want to put on muscle then, or you'll want to get more flexible. You want to do all those things. But The Gap and the Gain is a great book. All right. So if you do have ideas for these solo episodes, I'm all ears because I would love to hear from the audience. And if you go to createtailwind.com, my email's right there, or I'll give it to you right now. It'll be in the show notes. Jim Oliver at createtailwind.com. Pretty simple. Life is sometimes simple. Simplicity is elusive though, and simple doesn't mean easy. But one thing you got to start with is the right mindset. So audience, thank you for hanging in there with me. And I'm going to wrap this up like we wrap up every episode with the incredible words of Earl Nightingale and The Strangest Secret. Whatever you think, you will become.
Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about.
Thanks for listening to the Breakaway Wealth Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this show wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. If you want to start increasing your wealth building ability right now, go to community.createtailwind.com to join our free online community and get access to free, in-depth training designed to help you build real, lasting wealth. See you next week.